Shalom. All right, let me get straight into this lesson, but I want to go back into this subject matter. The Spirit led me to go back into this because there's some things that I want to bring out some more points about this solid weapons for quiet wars. So let's get all into this lesson. So I'm going to read this to you right here. It says, Top Secret, Solid Weapons for Quiet Wars, a programming manual for control of society. You hear this? So the whole thing is to put you under this spell, right? What's a spell? A spell is like an enchantment. You don't even know that you've been lied to. You don't even know like that you under an enchantment, right? So let's go more into this. So let's go here. I'm gonna show you something, right? So another one of these things that was used as a weapon of mass destruction, right? It's been weaponized as this so-called white Jesus, right? So-called white Jesus, right? So I'm gonna get into this article, but this is one of those things that's used as psychological warfare ever since you was a child, right? So going back into this right here, it's gonna make sense, right? So silent weapons for quiet wars. So this image this image was weaponized on you psychologically, right? Because most people think about warfare, right? A war, right? Silent weapons for quiet wars. They think about missiles and bombs and fighter jets and submarines, right? Tanks. No, this warfare is done in your mind, right? So let's go more into this. Psychological warfare, we're going to get into that. So psychological warfare is warfare, right? Check this out. At the top, psychological warfare, also known as PSYWAR, is the use of propaganda. Let me go to this. This is propaganda that was given to you since birth, right? This so-called image. This is a silent weapon. Right here, this is a weapon for quiet war, right? For push so-called white supremacy, right? So psychological warfare, we dealing with warfare, right? Also known as PSYWAR, is the use of propaganda and other psychological operations to influence people's opinions, emotions, attitudes, and behavior. Check this out. The goal is to make people feel less confident, hopeless, or afraid, and to break their will to fight or resist. Well, there you go. Welcome to America, right? So these international banking families known as the Illuminati, the elites, whatever you want to call them, right, have been controlling your media. They control images. They control art. They control literature, books, etc. Right? So going back in this image right here, this is a solid weapon for a quiet war. This image is plastered all through America on documentaries, in so-called churches, right, in magazines, on movies, right, in TV shows, right, in commercials, in advertisement, in billboards, right? Let's get into this. So-called white Jesus, and you're not white people. That's all a made-up social construct that our people ignorantly repeat to this very day. It says in churches across America, we hang portraits and images of so-called white Jesus. Chances are that somewhere in hallways, offices, chapels, study rooms, or sanctuaries, you will find water Salmon's head of Christ. This the Edomite that created this image, right? So-called white man. I did a lesson on this. This painting was done by Warner Salmon. You can look him up, do your own research. This is called the head of Christ, right? So-called white man created this image, right? It says some similar image in your church. So they got images in the likeness of a so-called white man, which would be Cedric Borgia. That's what our people and the other tribes are more familiar with. But this goes hand in hand with so-called white supremacy because that image head of Christ is in the likeness of a so-called white man, and that's the psychological warfare. That's why when we tell you his name was Yahushua, and he was a so-called black man, most of our people cannot shake out of the spell because of this. It says historically we know that so-called Jesus did not have white skin. That's another thing that you've been taught since birth, right? So let me show you something. I'm gonna show you the color white, and I'm gonna show Edomite, right? So you can see the difference. Let's get into this. So I'm gonna go to the typical Edomite looking person. So right here, this woman more than likely is an Edomite, right? The Edomite. So you see she has on a white shirt, but her flesh, her skin is not the color white. So where did they get this from? I went into a lesson going into what white means, and I went into a lesson going into what black means. Same lesson, go find it, right? But they push this white because it represents purity, innocence, right? Cleanliness, so on and so forth. All right, so let's go back, right? So they gave you this they weaponized this image, right? It says historically we know that so-called Jesus did not have white skin, and you Edomites don't have white skin. That's a common lie that you keep repeating, and our people ignorantly repeat that as well. Your skin is the color red. Your blood shows forth to your skin. It says in what most characters in scripture, they say Jesus, so-called Jesus, was a person of color with darker skin and probably had full dark beard. Of course he did. It says he most certainly did not look like images of a pale-skinned youthful man with long hair, right? But by 30 would have a hardened appearance of a person who had worked hard physical labor for most of his life. We know that the most common images we use of so-called Jesus are misleading as how he appeared. Right, so let's go here. I want to go back to this at the top. Psychology warfare, psychological warfare. It said, what does it mean to still display those images? Research in the fields of psychological, public health, and sociology are now beginning to answer those questions effectively. Howard and Summers, in their studies, found that pictures of a white God slash Jesus influence anti-black feelings with in white so-called white individuals. Image of so-called white Jesus is reinforced discriminatory feelings, right? It's heavy. So yeah, let's go here. It says at the top, perhaps even more disturbing images of a so-called white God cause individual intergroup negative feelings inside the so-called black community. The imposition of a white so-called Jesus also affects the eternal health of so-called black individuals. This shit get deep, right? So again, this image is a solid weapon for a quiet war. If you bring this information out to a so-called white person, an Edomite, they will get offended. They so delusional, they believe this lie, right? And it's integrated inside of the fabric of this country in a religious system, right? This image is everywhere. This represents so-called white superiority. Let's go here. I'm going to this definition, psychological warfare. Salakia. I went to that one. Let's keep going. I'll show you something else. I want to get into one more thing, right? And there's many other things that I want to go into, but I just want to keep it simple, right? So let's go here. So this is another one of those solid weapons for quiet wars, right? It says at the top, so-called white people own 86% of wealth and make up 60% of the population. Do you hear this? Read this right here. It said, who owns the wealth in the United States? It says, according to data from the Federal Reserve, them devils, in 1990, so-called white households own 90% of household wealth in the United States, whereas so-called black households own 3.8%, and so-called Hispanic own 2.1%. That's staggering, right? So this again, silent weapon for quiet wars. They control all the wealth, right? But this is not common knowledge, right? Well, you could say people know that, but people don't really know this particular breakdown right here, right? And people don't really want to deal with it, but it's here, right? This is how this works. Let me keep reading this. It says these numbers have changed little over the past 30 years, with so-called white households now owning 85% of wealth in 2019. So little has changed. Again, this is all systematic racism, right? This is all weaponized, right? You don't have to see when our people think about warfare, they just think about in the conventional way, right? When militaries lock horns, right? No, warfare is done in many other different ways. And this one of the ways that they do it. This is called economic, right, warfare. And this goes back into the curses, right? Because the Israelites, according to the book of Deuteronomy, right, and other prophecies, that you will be in the tail, you would be on the bottom of society, and the so-called white man and the other nations will be on top, right? So this is all fulfilling prophecy. But I'm showing you how the warfare could be going on and no bombs are dropped, no missiles are exchanged, no militaries are locking arms, no tanks are rolling into the field. You know what I'm saying? This is these silent wars that go on. Going back into this image, so I kind of want to go here. And this aids in Jake getting oppressed. And it leads to most of the women, right? They know if a man, okay, let me say it like this. Women have more, they look at things differently than a man do. Let me just say it like that. So they mind is wired differently, right? So if a man can't provide um like they traditionally would know of, right? They look down on that man. But this system is all rigged up. This was already set up for us to fail. And most of our women don't understand that. They don't get it. Check this out. I'm gonna show you something else. It says consistent with what we know nationally about earnings and education trends. The general national pattern is so-called white men are more commonly higher paid occupations. This all by design. So if you make more so-called money, you can afford to build your wealth up and so on and so forth, buy a home, right? Which the home is a scam, but I'm just using that to make a point, right? You can actually be able to do more, right, in this life. But when you oppress and this is systematically done, right, that's why things are the way they are. It's not a mystery, right? Again, this is warfare going on in every single way. They weaponize the food as well. That's a whole nother lesson, right? So the food has been weaponized to mislead you, to lie to you, to tell you something healthy, but it's really not healthy, right? To trick you. You'll learn to eat everything that the Most High put in earth. You'll live a more healthier life. But the common person don't know that. They made all this junk food, this Frankenstein food, convenient for you, so you can destroy yourself. You don't even know you're doing it, right? Again, silent weapon for quiet wars. Many other things they do. Look at the politics. That's a whole nother rabbit hole. But I can keep going on and on and on. I'm just showing you things, right, that's going on to this very day. And this image right here is still in most of our people's mind, right, of their God, right? This image right here, you can go to the other one with Cedric Borgia. It's still in the likeness of a so-called white man. You get the point. All right, hopefully this lesson was edifying. Call Halal Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakat Kwadash. Shalom.